Discover the incredible moment a man's touching choice unveiled the hidden owner of the airline. Sam Bennett adjusted his glasses, pearls of sweat dotting his brow as his hands deftly maneuvered the tools inside the garage. The familiar scent of motor oil mixed with the occasional whiff of gasoline brought a sense of calm amidst his unease. Yet today felt different. Each clink and clatter of metal seeped with anticipation. While working on a vintage private plane, his fingers brushed against something crumpled beneath the passenger seat, a weathered airline ticket. The date stamped nearly 40 years ago sent a shiver down his spine, igniting a flicker of curiosity that threatened to consume him. His mind raced, gears turning as he imagined the glory days of the Maplewood Airline. The community once thrived with planes soaring through azure skies, carrying dreams above cornfields and family homes. Now, though, the town was suffocating under the weight of loss and uncertainty. He needed to know more. There was a whisper of something significant, a legacy from the past tied to the ticket, and more importantly, to the town's present troubles. As he delved into the history of the airline, each detail revealed heartwarming ties to the elderly woman, Helen, who owned it all. Despite her wealth, she buried herself in the shadows of Maplewood, enshrined in the values of hard work instilled by her late husband. Each moment spent unearthing the story deepened his internal turmoil. Torn between honoring Helen's privacy and fanning the flickering hopes of his community, Sam felt entangled in an emotional web. If he revealed her identity, would he betray her trust? But could he stand idle while the town fought for survival? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The town meeting approached with an air of desperation. Faces once warm with camaraderie found themselves twisted with anger and confusion. As he stood at the front, Sam's resolve began to erode, the mounting pressure palpable in the room. Voices rose, hungry for answers, yet desperate to preserve their illusions. The community's hope for revival collided violently with his knowledge of Helen's choice to remain unseen, fueling an internal conflict that tightened around his throat. The fear of failing them gnawed at him relentlessly. And just when the air felt too thick to breathe, he spotted Helen's haggard silhouette at the back, eyes piercing through the crowd's fray. The silence in her presence felt loaded, holding a silent testament to the life she'd crafted away from the spotlight. Sam's heart thudded with recognition and a surge of compassion as her unyielding gaze met his. What now? The weight of their worlds pressed down on him, each second stretching impossibly. With Helen staring him down, a single question pulsed through his mind, swirling amidst the chaos. What choice would he make? The weight of her silence threatened to crack under the suffocating expectations of his neighbors. Sam stood at the precipice. Would revealing her identity serve the town's needs or lead to a devastating fracture of trust? Sam's heart raced as Helen's gaze intensified, the crowd a distant murmur around them. Time seemed to stall. He wrestled with the enormity of the moment. Revealing Helen's identity was not merely about disclosing a name. It was about uncovering a legacy marred by years of silence. Could he justify shattering her sanctuary for the sake of a fleeting hope among the townsfolk? His fingers tightened around the edge of the podium, grounding him as he fought against the tide of emotions. The faces pressed against the walls of the small meeting room transformed into a blur of expectations and desperation. He felt their anxiety curl around him, suffocating yet pressing for a conviction he didn't know he possessed. The very essence of leadership pulsed around him, demanding clarity in a time of chaos. something he had never quite felt equipped to deliver. "Sam!" The voice of a neighbor broke through the haze. A man near the front, his brown hair tousled and eyes wide, beckoned for answers. "We need to know what you found out. We deserve to know what we're up against." Swallowing hard, Sam fought against the instinct to retreat, to hide among the shadows that had always felt safer. The contrast of his insecurities against the urgency of the moment pounded in his ears. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone who relied on the answer he had withheld. He glanced at Helen again. She stood unwavering, yet the tremor in her chin spoke of a story buried deep within. Piloting through his uncertainty, he realized that his journey had not merely been about uncovering Helen's past. It was his own arc, too, navigating fears and responsibilities, learning about courage in decisions laced with ambiguity. Taking a deep breath, he spoke, his voice trembling yet resolute. "I found something important. Helen is more than just a name." The impact of those words hung in the air, a pivotal moment intertwined between the past and present. But still, he hesitated. The specter of betrayal lingered over him. Would bringing her story to light truly honor her legacy, or tear down the fragile edifice she had built? Yet, even through this conflict, clarity surged within him, a spark of understanding that he was, perhaps, ready to bear the weight of unveiling truths. She is the soul of Maplewood Airlines, the reason it existed, and she's our link to revive what we lost. His words resonated through the packed room, creating an electric connection between everyone present. Helen's expression softened, the tension in her posture easing ever so slightly. In that moment, an unspoken agreement crackled between them, as if she too understood the gravity of his decision. But the stakes had risen exponentially. A visible shift rippled through the crowd, questions brewing. "What will happen to her?" someone shouted, fear seeping into their inquiry. Sam's stomach twisted. This wasn't an abstract concept anymore. He had just unveiled a potential storm. The risk of Helen's vulnerability weighed heavily on him. Does this choice bring to light the hope they sought, or risks plunging them further into despair? His mind churned with possibilities, each one more daunting than the last. Within that moment of clarity, doubts surfaced. Was he truly prepared to face the full force of his neighbor's expectations? Would he be ready to defend Helen, the very embodiment of resilience? Resolute yet apprehensive, Sam prepared to address the crowd once more. The moment was upon him, a precursor to the confrontation that would define his character. The path unfurled before him, but he needed to gather the last fragments of courage. The weight of unresolved tension hung in the air. The door swung open. Uncertainty flooded the room, as beyond it lay the unknowns of Helen's past, both daunting and liberating. Which paths would open up as he ventured further into the depths of their intertwined destinies? Would he have the strength to guide his community through this tangled web of revelation? Sam stood before the sea of eager faces, their collective hope and trepidation a palpable force that threatened to swallow him whole. The stakes had been laid bare, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders like an anvil. As he searched for his voice amid the turmoil of thoughts battling within, he recalled the countless hours spent in the quiet corners of his mind grappling with his purpose. The stunning revelation he had just crafted loomed larger now. Helen was not merely an enigma, but a living testament to resilience and the heart of a community needing revival. However, the road ahead felt impossibly fraught with peril. He could sense the trembling undercurrent of fear that rippled through the audience, mirroring his own internal disarray. Were they prepared to face the reality of Helen's history? Were they ready to shoulder the burden that accompanied the truth? "Can you tell us more?" a woman near the back called out, her voice wavering, entwined with desperation. The room shifted in its collective resolve, awaiting clarity, yet all he felt was an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. How could he articulate Helen's significance without invoking further chaos? Her story is complex, Sam began, fearing the shallow pool of knowledge he possessed would not satisfy the depth of the questions raining down. She built this airline from the ground up when options were limited, forging routes that connected families. But, he paused, weighing the implications of what he was about to reveal. But the struggles she faced were not simply those of business. They were personal, deeply intertwined with our town's history. He looked at Helen, whose eyes shimmered with a courage he yearned to harness. Her silent encouragement stoked his resolve, illuminating the fragments of strength he had yet to embrace. This was not merely a moment of disclosure, it was a pivotal turning point in his own journey, a testament to moving beyond his insecurities and stepping into a role he had long shied away from, leadership. Sam pushed forward. Helen's achievements came with sacrifices, and the silence around her past is rooted in fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of judgment, fear of losing what had been fought for so fiercely. With every word, he felt the tension of uncertainty start to morph into something transformative. Perhaps this was a chance for both him and Helen to redefine their narratives, breaking free from the chains forged by silence. Gradually, he began to see ripples of understanding spreading through the crowd. This connection, forged not only through shared stories, but through embraced vulnerability, was a path toward healing. We're not just revealing her past, we're confronting our own, he stated. The gravity of the statement echoed within the room. To rise anew, we must embrace the entirety of our history, both the light and the shadows. The murmur of the crowd morphed into a cautious symphony of realization. Faces softened as their tension gave way to contemplation. Down the aisle, he caught sight of a few nodding heads. For the first time, he could almost taste the possibility of change in the air. Yet there remained an undercurrent of anxiety, a reminder of the challenges ahead. They were shifting closer to the precipice, daring to dive into the deep waters of their collective past. But this couldn't be just about him rallying the crowd and Helen playing the martyr. It demanded collective courage. What left him unsettled was a gnawing question he couldn't shake. Was he truly equipped to navigate this uncharted territory? Could he galvanize not just his own will, but the spirit of the entire town? The moment felt electric, and as he stood there, he realized this was more than just a dialogue. It was about rallying hearts and finding purpose. "Are you ready to walk this path with me?" Sam's voice rang out, filled with conviction that surprised even himself. However, as he awaited their response, an unsettling silence hung in the air. Would the hope he was igniting flicker out or blaze into something greater? And perhaps more unnervingly, where would this journey lead them all? As he looked into Helen's eyes, he knew they were on the verge of discovery that would redefine not only their lives, but the very fabric of their community's strength. What awaited them just beyond this threshold? The silence felt like a weight as it pressed against Sam's chest, constricting his breath. He could sense Helen's gaze, boring into him, her faith brimming with unspoken challenge. It ignited something deep within him, and in that instant he realized this was not merely about enlightenment, it was about transformation. As murmurs filled the air, Sam could hear snippets of fear and excitement. What if it shatters our dreams? Can we really face the truth? Their uncertainty mirrored a destiny he felt torn to unearth. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. This was his moment, not to simply convey information, but to coax the truth from the shadows and nurture it into the light. "How we respond from here defines us," he said, pulling on the thread of courage that began with Helen's story. "Our past is messy and complicated, but it is ours. To ignore it is to condemn ourselves to repeat it. We have a chance to build something more than just an airline. We can foster a legacy of resilience." The audience shifted, the tension rippling with doubt, yet sparking a flicker of hope. A voice rang out from the front. "What exactly are we facing?" The uncertainty hung heavy in the air, but within the question he sensed an opening. It was a plea for clarity, for reassurance, someone reaching for a lifebuoy in turbulent waters. "We face our fears," he replied, feeling the weight of the words as they escaped his lips, of rejection, of judgment, and of vulnerability. Helen bore those struggles so we could aspire to more, to become better. A lightness began to spread through him, a recognition that this time of reckoning exposed not only their past, but also the possibilities that lay ahead. As he looked around, he felt the intensity of their need for direction. This was not merely a conversation about Helen, it was a dare to explore their shared humanity. Let us learn from her courage. Let's take our history and weave it into something greater, transform it into a beacon for the future. With each moment that passed, Sam felt a confidence he hadn't known he possessed swell from within, clashing fiercely against his old fears. He began to walk the aisles, engaging with the people in a way he hadn't dared before. "What do you fear losing if we confront the truth?" he asked, a man who sat shifting anxiously in his seat. "What if your own story is interwoven with Helen's, just waiting for the chance to be told?" The collective breathing shifted as uncertainty morphed into introspection. Stories he had never known began to bubble to the surface, secret regrets and long-held ambitions. A woman raised her hand, trembling slightly, and confessed, "I always felt like we were fighting against something greater, but maybe we're meant to fight for something, to make our past our ally." "Yes!" Sam's voice crescendoed, feeling the room come alive with possibility. "It's time to place our stories alongside hers. This is not a burden, it's an opportunity, a chance to redefine who we are." The realization swept through the audience like an electric charge. One by one, shutters began to crack, eye contact intensified, and hesitations loosened their grip. But with this shift came fear. There was no denying that a deeper truth loomed. What would their individual revelations demand of them? Who would falter under the weight of honesty? Just as the energy built, so too did attention. The risk of failure hovered like a dark cloud. As he stepped back to the podium, Sam felt the pulse of accountability echo vividly within him. The moment felt pivotal, charged with potential energy. If we dive into this together, we may discover something incredible about ourselves, about our city, and Hero Airways. Yet, as the atmosphere began to thrum with hope, another voice cut through the echoes, a voice he recognized all too well, filled with skepticism. But what if this truth shatters everything we believe? Sam turned towards the shadow casting doubt, aware that with each step forward, he invited as much challenge as possibility. He could feel the urgency of their need for answers surging, but what lay behind that voice, past wounds, buried fears, reminded him that they were not yet ready. The path ahead promised uncharted territories, fraught with risk. The air thickened with the weight of expectation, and as silence settled again, Sam recognized the crucial question which would shape their journey. Are we courageous enough to confront not only the story that unfolded, but the shadows yet to reveal? With that, he braced himself for what they were yet to face, knowing everything hinged on vulnerability. The cloud of uncertainty loomed like a tempest in the distance, an omen of the confrontation to come. Sam stood at the podium, the weight of conflict pressing down on him like the unyielding grip of a storm. He had opened the floodgates to vulnerability, and now countless stories teetered on the edge of realization. Yet, as he glanced around the room, he sensed a chilling ambivalence, a deep-rooted fear lurking beneath their masked excitement. He cleared his throat, feeling the implications of his challenge echo through his core. In that void of self-doubt, the skepticism lurking in the corner of his mind began to surface. What if this turned to chaos? What if confronting their shared history shattered the protective barriers they'd constructed over the years? But there was only one way to find out. He needed to push through his uncertainty, using it as fuel instead of a barrier. Sam recentered his mind, the faces before him blurring into a mosaic of hopes and fears, and he remembered why he had decided to take this journey. It was not just about Helen's legacy. It was about forging their own identities, reclaiming agency over their narratives. Someone shifted in the back, drawing Sam's focus. It was Anna, the airline's financial officer. The glimmer in her eyes was a mixture of determination and trepidation. "What is it we actually stand to gain from this?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the gathering tension. "Are we prepared for what we might unleash?" Sam felt the pulse quicken in his veins. "It's precisely the uncertainty in answering those questions that makes this worthwhile," he asserted, the confidence in his own voice surprising him. "It's not about blind courage, it's about intentionally facing our truths." There was a faint murmur of agreement, a ripple of shared recognition. Sam leaned into this nascent energy, galvanizing it. "Imagine what could blossom if we owned our collective story. This isn't just Helen's fight, it's ours too. Our discoveries won't just reveal the past, but could redefine our future." The audience appeared ravaged by the dichotomy of trepidation and purpose. Sam could see Anna's resolve begin to shift, a flicker of belief igniting within her. It was promising, and yet the specter of potential failure loomed as a powerful undertow. Questions about loyalty, about personal stakes, churned beneath the surface. "Imagine our worst fears materializing," he continued, sensing the psychological labyrinth they were navigating together. "What if we confronted truths so raw, so painful, that our foundations cracked? Yes, this may lead to losing what we've built, but it could just as easily lead to the rebirth of Hero Airways itself. We could emerge stronger, reconfigured, identifying not just as an airline, but as a community built on integrity and understanding." The room seemed to vibrate, an undercurrent of hope juxtaposed with doubt. Sam was acutely aware of the choice each person now faced, to retreat into the safety of their past or to step into the unknown. His own choice lay bare before him, as palpable as the tension in the air. With renewed conviction, he addressed the collective again. "Together, we face our past to liberate our future. This moment is calling for courage, both individually and collectively. We are the architects of our destiny, and the question is, will we proceed?" He realized in that raw moment that he wasn't only urging them forward, he too was navigating his path anew. Just as the thunderclouds threatened to engulf him, he felt a flicker of determination. They could unify through shared vulnerability. It was a compelling invitation to growth, even if it came at a painful price. Just as he was about to call for a deeper reckoning, a voice thundered from the back of the room. "But what if the truth reveals something so damaging it dismantles everything? Are we ready for a reality check?" Sam's heart sank, but he locked eyes with his interloper. The challenge was clear, and with it, the invitation to confront the gut-wrenching possibility became undeniable. The stakes had been raised, and just as before, he faced something profound, an imminent confrontation that could shatter their preconceptions or serve as the catalyst for their rebirth. "Are we ready to discover what lies beneath the surface?" Sam demanded, his voice steady yet laced with an urgency that pierced the atmosphere. The collective held their breath, the tipping point teetering precariously. Their hands. The atmosphere shifted, not just in the room, but within Sam himself. The voice from the back, laden with doubt, acted like a mirror, reflecting all his fears back at him. Could they really bear the burden of what lay in wait? He felt the weight of their collective uncertainty pressing on him, a palpable force that tugged at his resolve. In that moment, Sam stood as both leader and seeker. His personal stakes were woven deeply into the fabric of this challenge. The legacy of Helen, the potential collapse of their airline, and the very essence of truth. The roses smelled sweet, but had thorns that cut deep. Could he unravel those thorns without losing everything? As the room grew heavy with silence, Sam fought through the apprehension, reminding himself that transformation often demanded a painful choice. "I know the fear you carry," he said, breaking the hush, his voice resonating louder than the pounding in his chest. "But we're not here to leave our pasts unexamined. We're here to confront it, because growth is born of discomfort, and clarity through chaos can unveil strengths we never imagined." He watched Anna, her watching gaze shifting between torment and intrigue. Something in him tightened, a recognition blossomed. Would she voice what he himself feared? He chose to see her not as a threat, but as a kindred spirit grappling with similar uncertainties. "Let me ask you this, Anna," he pressed, stepping toward her. "What if what we uncover doesn't just dismantle, but reinvigorates? What if the truth becomes the very foundation for a stronger Hero Airways?" He felt the heat of his words, ignited by the urgency crashing around them. Her expression transformed ever so slightly, a battle between skepticism and the glimmering potential of something greater. Sam's mind raced. He was inviting her and everyone else not just to face the fears of the past, but to cultivate their latent strengths. What truths might they unearth not only about their airline, but about themselves? As his gaze swept across the room, fire ignited within him further. He could see the internal dialogues playing out, the tightening of jaws, the flicker of hesitance in some eyes, and in others, the trace of something like hope, or perhaps defiance. He had ignited a spark, however small, but would it grow into a flame? In this charged environment, Sam understood his role was not merely one of leadership, but one of vulnerability. "To you, it's fear, but to me, it's an opportunity," he declared with conviction. "The truth may be uncomfortable, but sometimes it's the discomfort that makes us aware of our own strength." He paced the stage, feeling all their eyes drilling into him, weighing every syllable he spoke. A reality check is a preference, not a threat. It's about control. If we can embrace our reality, we can mold it into something transformative. As the murmurs shifted to an uneasy acceptance, he seized his moment. We can dismantle what needs to be dismantled to rebuild from the ashes. That is our choice. We cannot shy away from fear. We must confront it. The intensity in the room thickened, shifting yet again. Their decision felt imminent, suspended in space, as if every one of them was balancing on a tightrope, feeling the tremors beneath their feet. But through it all, Sam felt a profound connection, a collective weight of potential burdened by history, begging for release. And then came Anna's voice again. "But what if the truth reveals a deception we trusted?" It cut deep, a stark reminder that reality could bear consequences heavier than he had anticipated. Terror clawed at his insides, but he met it with resolve. It demanded a reckoning, one he hoped, in that moment, they would choose to embrace. "Then we face it together," Sam affirmed, steeling himself against the raw vulnerability thrumming through him. "But we must decide now if we're ready to walk this untraveled road." With the room poised in silence, poised on a precipice of decision, Sam felt the ground beneath shift subtly. Every heart thudded with potential at that moment, and he knew this was only the beginning. What lay ahead was yet uncharted territory, laden with the promise of revelation, ready to unveil the unspoken truths tethered in their hearts. Unbeknownst to them all, the next decision could change the very fabric of who they were, and the sky felt electrifying, charged with anticipation. A thought crossed his mind. Would they embrace this journey, or would it splinter them apart? His heart raced, knowing the next chapter loomed closer, seemingly inevitable, and yet packed with infinite possibilities. Would he, alongside his colleagues, break the cycle of fear and dare to step into a newfound reality? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, in the choices they would soon confront. Sam stood at the edge of a precipice, not merely of the stage, but of something far more profound. The weight of his colleagues' stares felt like a tangible force, urging him to forge an uncharted path into the murky depths of their unresolved past. To turn away now would mean retreating into familiar obscurity, a choice that seemed increasingly untenable. He would not allow fear to dictate their fate. "Let's break this down," Sam began, his voice steady, almost methodical. He could sense their anxieties coiling around them, and in that moment he envisioned each worry as a thin strand, weak alone, but capable of forming a sturdy cord when woven together. What truths lie hidden in our past? What assumptions can we put on trial? He invited the group to unearth their collective history, urging them to reflect on decisions made in cloistered boardrooms and whispered conversations behind closed doors. These were the shadows that had shaped their reality, and now it was time to confront them head-on. Would they be willing to relive the moments that terrified them? Would they draw strength from the scrutiny? As Sam challenged the group, Anna's question echoed in his mind. The truth could even reveal their vulnerability, a reality they had been protecting at all costs. Could they withstand the storm of accountability? The thought ignited a ripple of determination within him, even as an innate apprehension hummed beneath the surface. Sam recognized that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was a crucial component of leading a resilient team. It was a path that could redefine how they saw themselves and their company. Taking a breath, he addressed the room again. The past is not our enemy. If anything, it's the fabric from which we can weave our resilience. Instead of fearing these truths, let's question how they've stunted our growth. He could see slight nods of agreement. The atmosphere was shifting, the initial skepticism giving way to a glimmer of something more, a willingness to discover. "Who among you has felt the pull of compromise?" he continued, pacing the expanse of the floor as if traversing their collective narrative. Each individual thread of their history began to weave into a more significant tapestry. Whose trust was betrayed, and what secrets have we buried? With each probing question, Sam felt their guards begin to lower. He observed Anna's eyes flicker rapidly, assessing the implications of his words. Would she dare to share her story? Would anyone? Silence hung heavily, before Jacob, usually the first to complain, finally spoke. "I could have pushed for more transparency back when," he started, his voice uncertain but gaining momentum. "We glossed over so many issues instead of confronting them head-on." Encouraged by Jacob's admission, others began to chime in, expressing regrets and acknowledging compromise, a tapestry of shared vulnerabilities. Sam could feel a powerful current forming, one that flowed past fear and toward a shared commitment to confront their truths. This moment dazzled him. It was a revelation, not just for the team, but for himself. Here was the depth of leadership he sought, a journey layered with the richness of mutual understanding and support. They were beginning to shift from isolation into a shared sense of adventure filled with both apprehension and possibility. He found himself standing taller, a renewed sense of purpose blossoming within him. Yet, somewhere in that exhilaration, a sharp pang of dread quivered at the back of his mind. What if their revelations peeled back a layer that shouldn't have been uncovered? What hidden deceptions could come to light, and what fissures could emerge among them? These were obstacles he hadn't fully fathomed. Sam clenched his jaw, pushing those fears aside, steeling himself for the turbulence ahead. He sensed collective anticipation. The path ahead, though frightening, was also stirring. Would the courage they were cultivating lead them toward transformation, or dredge up divisions that could fracture them beyond repair. Just as clarity began to settle, Sam caught Anna's gaze once more. Beyond her initial skepticism, something unearthed inside her began to radiate assurance. His heart quickened as he understood. The moment was approaching when they would need to confront the very nature of their relationship. Loyalty, not just to each other, but also to their mission. Would they forge a new framework built on honesty, or would they retreat into the shadows of deceit? The need for decision hung in the air, taut and demanding. As he prepared to lead them further on this unpredictable voyage, a thought flickered through his mind. This was only the beginning of their reckoning. What truths would be laid bare in the service of their metamorphosis? The answers awaited just beyond the precipice. Sam took a moment to let the weight of his words sink in. The air seemed thick with anticipation, every heartbeat drumming an echo of unspoken fears and guarded hopes. He glanced around, catching fragments of anxiety contorting the faces of his colleagues, but also a budding resolve that stirred the atmosphere. It was the first time in a long while he felt the true weight of camaraderie among them. "Let's take a deeper look," Sam suggested, his curiosity ignited. He needed to draw them in further, to transform apprehension into insight. What were those moments of hesitation, those decisions we wish we could undo? I want us to drill down to the very essence of why we made those choices. What did we fear, and how did that fear manifest in our actions or inactions? Silence ensued, pregnant with potential. Sam pressed on. "I suggest we break into smaller groups, focus on one key issue, something unresolved that still resonates." He could see Anna shifting her weight, pondering her involvement. Normally, she exuded confidence, her convictions wrapped in certitude. But now a storm seemed to brew beneath her composed exterior. As the teams formed, Sam observed their dynamics shifting. Eyes met with vulnerability instead of mistrust. Voices began trembling. The discovery of shared trepidation transformed into a catalyst for collaboration. It was promising, yet in the quiet thrumming of their interaction, an unsettling thought gnawed at him. What if, amidst these discussions, buried resentments fractured their modest progress? In his own group, a sense of urgency blossomed. He turned to Anna. "What has held you back from speaking up?" he asked, his voice both gentle and insistent. The wrong approach could inadvertently close the door to the potential insight he sensed flickering inside her. Her gaze faltered before locking with his, a flicker of vulnerability igniting. "I felt that if I challenged the status quo, I would become the target," she confessed, her tone wavering slightly. It was safer to be compliant than to risk conflict. Her admission sent a ripple through the group, acting as a balm for the creeping unease. "Safer, but at what cost?" Sam pressed, inviting the question to dance around the room. As others absorbed her words, several nodded in silent agreement, reflecting on their own facades of safety. The discussion unfolded like a series of dominoes. They began to share stories of tension that had become commonplace, suffering in silence, fearing reprisal or isolation. Each confession acted as an additional thread interlacing their individual experiences into a vibrant narrative of shared struggle. Sam felt himself shifting with the mood. No longer did he hover on the verge of uncertainty. He was becoming a conduit for these truths to surface. His confidence blossomed as each revelation wove them tighter together. Yet he recognized the fine line they navigated, the potential for collective healing juxtaposed against the risk of deeper wounds. "So why stay silent?" he questioned, his voice steady yet probing. "Is it the fear of discomfort, or do we devalue our voices? What if every unopened door is another opportunity lost?" The conversations deepened, exposing raw emotion and long-held grievances. Sam guided them carefully, keenly aware of the fragile ebb and flow of dialogue. Their collective unease surged and fell, revealing more of themselves than he had anticipated. In those moments, he understood vulnerability as an act of courage, a path to authenticity he had only theorized about before. But beneath the exhilaration of their discoveries, Sam felt that familiar dread again. What if the truths unearthed here incited factions instead of unity? What if, instead of healing, they were setting the stage for irrevocable fractures among their ranks? Each revelation, while liberating, could also fracture the very bonds he was trying to strengthen. As discussions dwindled into quiet reflection, Sam had a moment of geometric clarity, a realization striking harder than the fear that lingered. They were on the cusp of something transformative, yet fragile. Yet it was vital that he prepared them for the emotional landscape lurking just beneath the surface. Soon, we'll need to decide what we do with this newfound understanding, he finally said, a weight hanging on each word. The real question is, can we embrace honesty even when it's painful? The intensity of that question hung heavy in the air, a promise of confrontation that lay on the horizon. As Sam surveyed the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real reckoning was yet to come. They had awakened their vulnerabilities, but where would they lead? With resolve, he led them back into the fray, determined to transform their apprehension into action. Would their collective strength emerge as the foundation for a new beginning, or would it unravel under the weight of accountability? The immediate future held answers that would test them all, and Sam was prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. Sam took a deep breath, feeling the gravitational pull of the moment pressing harder on his chest. Discomfort lingered right beneath the surface, a tension fraying at the edges of their newfound unity. He sensed the impending challenge. The uncharted territory of their shared revelations would demand everything from him and his colleagues. What had begun as a group discussion was quickly morphing into a battleground of opinions, expectations, and fears. As he considered his next steps carefully, his instincts urged him to maintain the momentum they had built. The stakes felt incredibly high, and he needed to navigate this landscape with a deftness that had often eluded him in the past. How could he turn honest discussion into productive action without losing the fragile connection they had forged? Okay, he called out to his group, eyes ablaze with determination. Now that we've brought our fears to light, what do we do with them? Simply acknowledging our struggles isn't enough. They need to propel us into meaningful action. He could feel the energy in the room shift again, a collective breath drawn in anticipation. A hand shot up. It belonged to Jamie, a quiet employee often overshadowed by louder voices. He cleared his throat, clearly fighting to articulate his thoughts. What if we set up a system to voice our concerns regularly? He proposed tentatively. Like a monthly check-in where we can share what's working or what's not without fear of judgment. Sam recognized the seed of a practical solution in that idea. It was a tangible method for maintaining the dialogue while also establishing accountability for the group's progress. That's a start, Jamie, he encouraged. How else can we address the barriers that have historically silenced us? The room buzzed, ideas overlapping and bouncing around like popcorn in a microwave. Sam noted the shift in energy. Each suggestion was a piece in a larger puzzle. Some proposed creating anonymous feedback channels, enabling a more open discourse. Others suggested generating group goals based on their shared discussions, tailoring their objectives to reflect both individual aspirations and collective resolve. It was exhilarating watching the conversation unfold. An invisible thread connected them all, woven from each person's voice, every idea pooled into a collective pool of potential. Yet, as enthusiasm surged, another sense of dread prickled the back of Sam's mind. Would these proactive measures genuinely dismantle the fear that had previously shackled them? Against the backdrop of inspiration, a nagging doubt lingered. Could they withstand potential backlash against these shifts? He shared this apprehension aloud, and the resulting response was immediate. "If we're all in this together," Anna spoke up, her voice strengthened by the confidence forged in vulnerability, "then we need to support each other when things get rocky." A chorus of agreement followed, revealing an undercurrent of solidarity that surprised even Sam. However, as the meeting drew to a close, a new sensation gnawed at him, an exhilarating yet disquieting anticipation. What would happen the moment they faced external forces that didn't share their newfound commitment to transparency and collaboration? Could they stand firm against outside pressures that sought to undermine them? That moment crystallized for him. It became clear that as much as they had fought against their internal struggles, the real battle loomed on the horizon. The skepticism and resistance they might face from the organization at large concerned him greatly. Let's be honest, there will be risks involved in changing the way we operate. We will face challenges and potential opposition when we put plans into action. But are we ready to fight for this transformation? He asked, his gaze sweeping across their hopeful faces. With resolution forming in the shared silence, Sam could feel the energy shift once again. A sense of purpose blossomed among them. The emotional weight of their experiences had forged them into a unit, not just colleagues, but something much more significant. Yet, as he reflected on their conversations and the aspirations they had set, he realized a personal reckoning had begun to take shape within him. What had he been holding back? What hidden fears or personal conflicts still haunted his decisions? The urge to step fully into this new dynamic surged within him, an undeniable call to explore not just their collective potential, but his own. As he sat with this burgeoning awareness, excitement mixed with fear washed over him. This journey was about to take a turn into uncharted waters, and the question pressed against his mind. Would he embrace the challenge, or would he cling to the safety of his familiar roles as he had done for so long? With his heart pounding in anticipation, Sam knew that the time had come for his own path of vulnerability to intersect with their collective journey. But would that risk lead to triumph, or expose a truth he wasn't prepared to confront? As the dust settled from the recent revelations, Sam Bennett felt a profound shift within both himself and his colleagues. They had cast aside layers of fear, confronting not just their past, but also the very essence of what made them a team. The challenges ahead felt monumental, yet the supportive energy thrumming in the room was palpable. They were no longer mere employees. They had transformed into a collective force, ready to navigate uncharted waters together. With an invigorated sense of purpose, Sam stood taller than ever. No longer the unsure mechanic hiding in the shadows, he had stepped into the spotlight as a leader who sought to rally others not just through words, but through actionable change. He felt a new confidence coursing through him, providing a sturdy foundation upon which to build their next steps. "Let's talk about a plan," he announced, surveying the room filled with eager faces. "We must create actionable goals that reflect not only Helen's legacy, but also our newfound resolve." The tension in the air shifted from uncertainty to excitement as ideas flowed like water, igniting a sense of possibility. As they brainstormed, tangible strategies emerged. Weekly check-ins would become the cornerstone of accountability. They would establish committees focused on unearthing and addressing concerns. They decided to be proactive in confronting issues rather than reactive, a transition from merely surviving to thriving. It felt refreshing, like the first breath of spring air after a long, harsh winter. Sam's focus turned inward as the discussions unfolded. It had taken this experience for him to realize how deeply he had feared stepping into his power, fearing visibility and vulnerability. He had witnessed how sharing stories encouraged his team to find their voices. This was his moment to fully embrace his newfound strength, and shinging aside the doubts gnawing at him, he intended to face whatever challenges skirted on the horizon. This shift was more than just about keeping Helen's legacy alive. It was about harmonizing their individual and collective aspirations. He was ready to forge ahead, demonstrating that authenticity was, in fact, a strength. Weeks turned into months, and as the initiatives began to take root, Sam experienced tangible transformations. Communication improved dramatically, and his colleagues flourished in their roles, unearthing solutions and creativity that once lay dormant. With every success, his leadership qualities sharpened, his self-doubt fading into the background. He authentically engaged with the team, harnessing input as fuel for growth and innovation. The defining moment came during a community event celebrating the revitalization of the airline, a project they had meticulously planned together. People from all corners of Maplewood were invited, families who had grown up hearing stories of the airline's heyday, alongside those recently drawn to its new direction. As the event unfolded, Sam stood before the crowd, equipped with a clarity he had long sought. "For too long, our story was defined by fear and silence," he began, taking a steadying breath. "Today marks a new chapter, not just for Hero Airways, but for all of us. We are unified in our commitment to resilience and growth, and I am proud to stand alongside you as we embrace the legacy of our past while shaping our future." Applause erupted, and in that moment, Sam felt the culmination of his journey, a visceral recognition of his growth. He was no longer just a mechanic who stumbled upon an airline ticket. He was a leader who had woven together a community through shared values and courage. As the applause faded, he gazed around, realizing they were no longer an assortment of hesitant individuals. They had morphed into a cohesive entity, bound by authenticity and a shared purpose. Each person stood beside him, eyes filled with both pride and anticipation. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He felt Helen's presence in the audience, a silent testament to the importance of legacy. They had honored her, and together they had transformed vulnerability into their greatest asset. Stepping away from the podium, he absorbed the scene before him, a testament not just to their growth, but to his own personal evolution. He had responded to the call of purpose, allowing his insecurities to evolve into strengths. Feeling a surging gratitude, he knew he had achieved something profound. Not only had he unlocked the strength within himself, but he had also ignited a flame within his entire community. They were ready, willing, and able to seize the future. In this new chapter, Sam stood resolutely confident, firmly grounded in his own power as a leader, illuminated by achievement and the unwavering support of those around him. More than that, he had proven something to himself, that true courage lies not in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to rise against it. Now, dear viewers, it's your turn to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this impactful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this resolution. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.